All right. Let's see here. All right, looks like I'm live. A little bit of equipment malfunction. Come on now. There we go. All right, how the heck are you? Sorry about that. This is a live show, folks. This is a live show. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to your weekly What the Heck's Going On in the Housing Market on the Savvy Home Seller channel. And I'm Jen Sylvester. Who else would I be on this channel? I am super happy to be here and tons to dig into, and so glad that you guys are joining me. And if you're joining on the replay, well, happy watching, happy listening. I hear from a lot of you guys that you listen to this live stream while you're doing your housework. Well, that's a good thing. I appreciate that. I'm honored to be with you when you're dusting and vacuuming. You can head on over to my house after you're done. Got a lot to cover. We're talking about the potential national housing emergency that's coming down from the White House. And you say, well, how's the housing market? Well, the housing market is the housing market. It is not life or death. It is not, buying, eggs, bread, and milk, snow, or natural disaster, but it is a huge part in one of the biggest gross domestic products in our country. And when that is going south, the economy is affected. So they're kicking the ball around up there at the White House, and I'm going to dig into it and what it looks like, what they're talking about, what's the probability, and all the things, as I usually do. But before we get rocking and rolling, we're going to jump right into it because I got a lot of stuff that I want to share with you guys. Check out the poll. I want to know what your thoughts are on if a housing emergency is declared. What's going to be affected first? There are so many opinions. Of course, everybody's got an opinion. My grandmother used to say, everyone, opinions are like butts. Everybody's got one. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. So you can chime in on the poll. If you're watching this on the replay, sorry, the poll's only during the live stream. Maybe you can catch us on the next one. The other thing is every week we do this. I want to know about your wins this week. What good things happened? Did you sell? Did you buy? Did you clean? Did you get out of the house? I want to know. Just tell me anything that's good. We gotta get the mojo going here. We gotta get some good vibes going, and because a lot of this stuff is charged, and you know what? When you're talking about a state of a housing emergency, how can it not be politically charged? So let's get some good mojo going. Share with me your wins. If you have questions, put QQQ before the question, if you can remember to do so. It helps me just go through the chat real quick and pick those out, make sure that I can get to you. And then, of course, as I have been doing, I put links to all the articles that I'm going to cover, all the sources of information, so you can check it out on your own, because I don't have the time to go through the entire article. There might be some things in there that you want to check out for your particular area. So we got a lot of good stuff to cover this week. And we got the chat popping. We got Angie. Angie's in the house. Good to see you. Made it this time. I remember from last week. I think it was last week. You were running late, and we got hello. That's got to be a Mrs. Doubtfire reference, right? Hello. Baking cookies. Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. We got Michael X and in the house. Waiting for your great commentary. I appreciate that, my friend. That means a lot. That means a lot. I have you guys all here. We got Clark, my friend Clark in Atlanta. And yes, this does feel like Romper Room. And you know what? It's a blast from the past. I kind of love it. I see all my friends show up here, all my savvy home seller community friends. MHOH just piped in and says, my prediction for a housing emergency is nothing. Nothing will happen. Well, something's going to happen, whether it's good or bad, remains to be seen. But something's got to give. something's got to give. We can't keep this pace indefinitely. It's because right now the trajectory is not is not good. So let's just jump right in here. Let's just jump right in and this article is and you know there were oh my goodness when I was scouring the headlines doing my research what the hot topics are for this week what's happening across the country this national emergency in the White House was all over the place. So I picked this article from realtor.com. I often go back to realtor.com because I feel like there's honestly the least amount of fluff and just some good data points. So they covered it, but this dropped last week, but you're going to see in a minute that this has been something that's actually been floating around for a while. It's just been floating under the radar. So it says the Trump administration is considering emergency measures to address the housing affordability crisis, and it is a crisis. It says that has left millions struggling to pay rent and priced out of home ownership. This is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said last Monday. We may declare a national housing emergency in the fall. We're trying to figure out what we can do, and we don't want to step into the business of states, counties, and municipal governments. That's where it gets sticky. The federal government can only go so far. And one thing that Trump had said on his campaign trail is he wants to push back responsibilities to the states. Which is a little counterintuitive to what he's actually doing in other areas, but that's neither here nor there. But in terms of telling the states what they need to do and how they should do it, he doesn't want to do that, and it's hard to get involved in something like the national housing situation, national housing market without stepping on toes. So it's very it's a tough road to navigate. It says Bissett declined to list any specific actions under consideration by the president, but he said that administration officials are studying ways to decrease closing costs and nationally standardize the local patchwork of building and zoning codes. So we've heard about this. This is something that was mentioned by Trump early on in the campaign. It was mentioned to him. I covered it in a live stream months ago about the standardization of local, the building codes, zoning codes. The thought process being that would free up builders to build with less restrictions, which would allow them to introduce more inventory into the market. So this isn't new, but the flip side is it's not new, but not much has been done about it. The closing cost piece, I want to kind of take a sidestep on that because the closing costs, I actually had some folks comment on a couple of my videos this week about the rising cost of closing costs. And what's interesting, and I pulled up this article. Now, this is back in June from last year, but it does, or a couple months ago rather, this year. But that's not relevant. So ignore the headline because the rates are not near 7% anymore. But what is relevant is what people are paying for closing costs. And this data was compiled across the country, and it says that the Delaware leads the way with 2.9%, almost 3% of closing costs based on sales price, including recording and taxes. Home buyers in that state are paying closing costs. Now, this is according to a new study by Lodestar Software Solutions, a provider of mortgage closing cost data. It says home buyers in that state are paying closing costs of approximately $12,157. Oof. But they're not paying the most in the country based on an average sale price. People buying property in Washington, D.C., can expect to pay it the most at closing $17,545. And their findings were based on a $735,000 sale price, which equals to about 2.39% of that sale price. Now, why is it so high? A lot of it has to do with transfer taxes. Big surprise, right? It's taxes, taxes, taxes. Now, keep in mind, this is on the buying side, not on the selling side, because the seller doesn't typically, not always, but typically, oftentimes the transfer taxes are on the buyer side. So state transfer, without transfer tax or minimum transfer taxes are found to have lower total costs. But the states with the highest closing cost as a percentage of sale price tend to be locations where the transfer taxes make up a bulk of the pricing. Now, why do I bring this up? Because it kind of it absolutely plays into this housing affordability crisis, because these closing costs, and oftentimes you say, well, closing costs, what the sellers are paying commissions, what the buyer, they haven't even included buyer agency commissions. They mentioned that, and any commissions paid on either side, just standard. If you were doing for sale by owner and a private, purchase, all the things, you're still going to pay closing costs. Now, transfer taxes differ from state to state. Transfer taxes, you may say, well, that's a money grab. and maybe it could be in some ways, but the transfer tax all goes back into the state pot, and that state pot is divided into all the municipalities on all our state funded infrastructure and such, housing infrastructure, anything that the state supplies. Some, I mentioned earlier, like some states will provide, will be on the seller side. So Massachusetts, the seller pays the transfer tax, $4.56 per thousand, and it's been that way for as long as I've been in real estate, 30 years, almost 29 years. In New Hampshire, our neighbors to the north, it's $15 per thousand, and it is split between the buyer and the seller. Why is there such a big difference? There's no sales tax in New Hampshire. It's got to go back to the municipality. It's got to go back to the state to help cover costs of infrastructure. So the money comes from somewhere. And how do you decrease closing costs? As far, when you're by calling a state of emergency, how do you decrease closing costs? How do you decrease the taxes that are being charged by the state? Inquiring minds want to know, because that is probably the largest chunk of your closing costs. Now, there is a chunk, and I'm going to get into it in a bit, on the mortgage side. But if you're selling the property and you don't have a mortgage and you're buying a property cash, okay, those transfer taxes exist regardless. So how are they going to curb that? Inquiring minds want to know. All right, so before I continue on, I was going to jump over the chat here, see if you guys have questions about what I've dug into so far. Let's see. Oh, we got Deacon Bean Cooter says, had a realtor today decline my listing because I wasn't offering the buyer agent a commission.
Really?
That is what you call an 80% agent, my friend. That is what you call an 80%. An agent that is going to not take your listing because you do that, doesn't know how to negotiate and market like a professional agent. If you don't want to do it, that's great. That is your decision. That is your decision. But that's not the reason to pull the plug. That means they don't know how to do their job. In IMO, as the kids say, in my opinion. I'm sorry that happened to you. For sure. That stinks. Let's see. Krista K says, what do they mean by national disaster related to housing? Not sure what you're referring to on that. I mean, I think there's, when they call it a national disaster, it's a national emergency, not a national disaster. We're talking national emergency. National emergency could pertain to a national disaster. But we're not talking about a national disaster. We're talking about, hopefully it's not a disaster, but we're talking about a national emergency. is what we're talking about here. Um, so let's see. Yeah, Angie says, what are they going to do? Open up some land. One thing, yes, we're gonna dig into that in a second. Wait for it. Wait for it. Angie says, win for us. Finally got a new 3-car driveway put in. Well, that's a pretty awesome thing. Fantastic. Been watering it all week. That's funny. That is that's humorous. Um, let's see. Okay. Let's see. Patriot Grammy says decrease in home prices, but homes have been going up and down since I purchased my home in 1973. That's the trajectory. That and here's the thing is that it is going to take a it's let's say an act of Congress, but even an act of Congress can't pull housing prices down. When it comes to housing prices, there is nothing that is going to forcibly change home prices. Why? Because a home price is what you as the seller are willing to sell at, or you as the buyer are willing to pay. And a buyer that is willing to pay X amount of dollars is a very personal decision to them. I have heard so much commentary about, oh, it's dumb, it's stupid, they're paying so much, they're ridiculous, they're making bad decisions, it's a, whatever, whatever. That is not up for anybody's decision. That's like, me coloring my hair. So, to say that, that's my own personal decision. My decision that's good for me may not be good for you. May not like it. That's fine. That's fine. You don't have to pay X amount of dollars for that house down the street. It may not be worth it to you, but to the person that purchased it, that's their decision, and value in their mind is going to be different than value in your mind. If they may have some emotional, connection to the property, or they see something that is, instilling comfort, or it's location, or it's a demand because they want to be near a family member that's sick and ill, or whatever the list goes on and on and on. That what a buyer is able to pay, there's a lot of money out there. Feels like there isn't. It's not in my bank account, but there's a lot of money across the country. And those people that have the money, it's not all the rich and famous. It's not all the millions and millions of dollars. There's a lot of upper middle class folks that have a lot of cash, a lot of equity. And that telling them you can't buy that, or you have to pay, the seller has to accept a lower price because of a national housing emergency. Have fun with that. So it's got to be a different way. It's got to be a different way to, instead of, instead of trying to make the water go down, how about we build a bigger boat? There's that. Let's see. Patty says interest rates will drop. Why is this not an option? Well, we're going to get into some information about that. And to be honest, it's not as easy as that, because there are a lot of pitfalls to there's a big ripple effect with, when you have an interest rate. It's not a matter interest rate drop. It's not a matter of flipping a switch, lowering the rates. Now it's more affordable. It's way more convoluted in a lot of ways. But I'm gonna dig into that a little bit of that data. Yes, MHOA says if it's an emergency, why are they waiting? Because it's complicated. Because it's complicated, and wait to see what I show you in a second. Let's see. All right. Wiggly arm guy, good to see you. How would they be able to decrease closing costs without stepping on city, state, and private businesses? There's no way they can. The only thing they could do is credits. They can't decrease the amount that they charge, but they could decrease the amount that the buyer or seller pays. They can offer credits. We saw that during COVID. We saw that during the pandemic. Okay, there were a lot, home buyer credits. I'm going to dig into that in a second. Obama did it during his administration. It's been done several times, and that helps offset some of those costs. So All right, I'm going to dig right back into this because, like I said, I got a lot to talk about, and as you guys know, I like to talk, so I can go on for an hour and a day here. So I don't want to waste the time. Get back right into it. Um, let's see here. An Oval Office press conference Tuesday. Donald Trump confirms emergency declaration on housing affordability is under consideration without offering specifics. Of course, they're not going to say that it's absolutely going to happen until they've got a solid plan in place, but they're talking about it. Okay, talk of the emergency measures come at a time when Americans face deep struggles, affordable housing, home affordability is near a 40-year low. Well, that's a fun fact. Nearly half of renter households are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on rent. I feel this. My oldest kid is looking for an apartment. So if anybody knows an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment, her and her partner, her boyfriend can rent for under $2,000, which would think it'd be easy to find. Nope, nope. It's going to burden the renters as well. It says, however, any federal attempt to attack the housing crisis will have to face a harsh reality that most of the key policies that influence housing supply are set at the state and local level. It remains unclear exactly what kind of emergency measures, this is why they don't know, and this is why they haven't done anything yet, what kind of emergency measures the administration could take to address housing, or even if emergency powers in this way is lawful. The best ways the administration could make an impact are by encouraging the building and purchasing of homes. And this is a drum that I've been beating. It's a lot of folks. This is conversations about build. The only way you stifle demand is by creating more of the product. We saw this during the 80s, 90s, if you guys remember, Christmas time, it was whatever the hot toy is, okay? They created demand by creating less widgets, Cabbage Patch Dolls, Beanie Babies, whatever. If they had an unlimited supply, guess what would happen? Yeah, bring that price down. There'd be nobody, jumping over each other Christmas Eve trying to get the last one. There'd be plenty. And you wouldn't find it years later on eBay selling for big bucks. Or somebody on the street corner selling a Cabbage Patch Kid, Christmas Eve. Bonker stories back then. But you need more widgets. We need more housing. Why do we need more housing? It's not because people are spending more necessarily. It's because we have increased population. People are living longer. The boomers are staying in their homes longer. We have more babies that were born. Huge boom after 9/11. Huge boom. Huge. And we're going to see another boom because, not getting to the birds and bees, but you know what? During pandemic, when you're locked up in a house, do I need to finish? There's going to be, there already has been started a baby boom. So more people, you need, more babies, more bigger households, all the things. These folks have to go somewhere. And that's why we've got this issue. Uh, Berner suggests, and this is the Realtor.com senior economist, Joel Berner, that finding ways to streamline the permitting process for home builders, which is something that the Trump administration has talked about, and put fewer restrictions on builders could help boost housing supply, particularly in heavily regulated, high-cost areas like the Northeast. So I am doing some research. I'm going to be replacing my boiler and hot water heater, propane fired. And so I'm having my propane company come in. I got a plumber coming tomorrow, doing my research and, figuring out what my options were. And I was talking to my plumber and he would, no, excuse me, my propane company. And he said that with new construction, the requirements have and again, I'm in Plymouth, Massachusetts, South Coast, south of Boston, and the restrictions have become so ridiculous. He says they are stifling the ability for people to do. They're pushing people towards electric and pushing them away from propane heat, propane hot water. But he says you have to, when it comes to things like car chargers, they're now requiring new builders to put a electric car charger in every garage. Now I'm all for energy efficiency. I believe me, when I'm doing my research, I'm trying to figure out if I want to do one of those combi, on the wall boilers for my house and all the things, whether I want to go that route. I am all for energy efficiency, but come on. Because you know that that car charger that you could probably get yourself for 300, 400, $500, you know that they're upcharging that thing to probably 1,500, 2,000 bucks to the consumer, for installation, or to the builder. The builder's including it in the cost, up in the cost of the building. So that's the stuff they're talking about, is that, the silliness. Hopefully in other parts of the country, it will not start. And this is the concern I have with new construction, is that they'll loosen it too much. And builders that are already having, you've heard all the horror stories, right? All the horror stories that about builders across the country cutting corners. Do we really want to allow them to cut more corners? Like, could this be Pandora's box? Could this be Pandora's box? If it is not super, super carefully monitored, yes. Yes, all of a sudden you have a home buyer, first time home buyer, or you're going in and you're like, you've been looking for years, you've wanted to do this. Now you can finally afford it, and you buy the house, and then a year later you're in trouble because the house is a piece of garbage, because they cut the corners because they legally could. So it could rack up to some serious issues if it's not monitored properly. So, and I got actually something else I want to talk about. Stay tuned a little bit about construction costs and how those have changed recently. Some new data that just came in. He goes on to say that this would have, in pertaining to the regulated high cost areas, or the restrictions on builders, this would have the best long term impact. But the federal government could also juice the housing market in the short run by making it easier to buy a home. This could include offering a tax credit to offset the closing costs. Now, this is what I was alluding to earlier. A similar tax credit was offered to first-time homebuyers during the Obama administration in 2008, when the economy entered a deep recession. However, that tax credit required an act of Congress. You wonder where that saying, "an act of Congress," came from. It's not easy to go through all those steps, and it takes time. And it says it's unclear whether the executive branch could take a similar step on its own. The National Association of Realtors says it is close. It is in close contact with the White House, engaged in ongoing discussions on practical solutions to expand housing opportunities. The administration's consideration for a housing emergency. And actually, Kate, you know what, Kate, you were correct. They did, well, not disasters, emergency. Sorry, emergency underscores the urgency. My brain is going too fast. My mouth's going too fast for my brain, or brain's going too fast for my mouth. Sorry. Um, I'm so excited to talk about this stuff with you. It says the housing emergency underscores the urgency we've long raised. Supply constraints are the greatest obstacle to affordability. Supply constraints are the greatest obstacle to affordability, with the nation short 4.7 million homes. I know it's hard to believe, but it is absolute. The data supports it. It goes back to the fact that we have too many people and not enough buildings to put them in. It says bold, coordinated action is needed now to boost housing supply so more families can achieve the American dream of homeownership and the generational wealth it provides. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean stick-built homes. It's time to think outside the box. And I want to share with you in a little bit, I'm going to share with you some information that I thought was very interesting, that might be an opportunity that they could leverage to kind of tip the scales here. It says it goes on saying, in a memorandum to the heads of all executive departments, agencies, Trump directed them to take action to lower the cost, but they did, of housing and expand housing supply, but didn't give them any specific actions to take. Go do it. How? I don't know. Just go do it. Oh boy. It says since then, the administration has moved forward with plans to identify federal land. Now, again, this was something that he mentioned in his campaign. He beginning of the year, maybe 3-4 months ago, I actually did a live stream about it, in terms of identifying federal land to use to be opened up and basically convert it from federal land, protected land that can't be built on, to residentially zoned land that can be built on. Identifying that land is a big question mark because a lot of that land, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of nowhere, which means that, yes, it's going to be affordable. The prices are going to be low. Why? Because the demand is going to be low. Demand, the demand equals what people are willing to pay, period. Right? If someone's close, the reason why people pay a lot of money for the Northeast, why? Because we have massive number of colleges and hospitals and industry and tech. I mean, it is oozing with jobs, high paying jobs, that bring people in. If you got this awesome residential community in the middle of nowhere, it takes you an hour and a half to get to work. I don't know if that's the answer to the problem. I think it's a band-aid, but I don't think it's the answer. This is in the legislative branch. Now, here's the thing that when I said that they've been working about this is reaching the news now, but this is not new news. It says in the legislative branch, a bill packed with provisions aimed at boosting the housing supply and lowering housing costs has gained partisan support in the Senate, passing out of committee unanimously last month. A full Senate vote on the bill has not been scheduled. Known as the Road to Housing Act of 2025, the bill would create a best practices framework for local zoning and land use policies, which could be copied and implemented by local jurisdictions. Well, this sounds great, right? Here's the thing. This bill, they've been working on this bill for a couple of years. This is not new. This is not necessarily new. So this was posted in July. This is, an overview of the bill. Again, I'm going to put all the links to this in the description, and it doesn't give you a whole lot of, and I'm not going to go deep into this on the live stream, but just to give you, an overview of what they want to see happen. This is a real thing. This is not just a pie in the sky, the president saying, which he's kind of notorious for, like making all these broad sweeping remarks, and then there's no substance behind it. There is substance behind, some change. And this Road to Housing Act of 2025, their key elements are, expand and preserve housing supply, remove barriers, to housing development, increase, preserve existing housing. I don't know what they're talking about there. Promote innovative construction methods. I'm going to talk about something in a minute about that. Expanding modular manufactured housing. Addresses a neighborhood blight and supports community recovering from natural disasters. It would be nice to help those in need that are suffering, from all the hurricanes and fires and all the things. Improve housing affordability and access. Advance accountability, fiscal responsibility. Yes, we have a government that's talking about fiscal responsibility. That's like telling a child to hold yourself responsible for not eating too much sugar. Sorry. My feelings on that. Improve oversight and program integrity, strengthening oversight of housing regulators, streamline program coordination, etc. Again, this is the framework that they want to pass on to the states, for the states to have these. And that's important to know because the federal government does not want to get involved in what builders in Massachusetts or builders in Alabama or wherever. They don't want to get involved in overseeing that stuff. They don't want to have their hand in the cookie jar that way. What they want to do is put this framework to say, okay, we've done all the heavy lifting. Here's a way for you guys to build more and create more housing and help the homeowners and home buyers at large in your area. So there's some legs to this. There are legs to this. The question is what is practical and what is What's actually, what's actually going to meet, when's the rubber going to meet the road? All right, let's see what you guys are chatting about in here. Um, dun, 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 let's see. Yes, Angie, yes, the capital gains. Yes, capital. I read that came up in one of my with articles in my research about, actually raising. That just makes sense to me. I don't know why it's not done yet. The capital gains limit hasn't been touched in a very long time, so it hasn't reflected. It doesn't reflect all of the gains that we've seen through through the boom, through the pandemic boom. So yeah, it needs that needs to, like, I don't understand why that hasn't happened yet. Um, let's see. Uh, let's see. Shelly says my house has been on the public MLS 1 week. 7 weeks of cleaning, purging, and selling. Filled 2 storage units. Very unsure if we'll get an offer. Well, first off, congratulations for getting your house on the market. Second, patience. Patience and optimism. That's what I'm going to tell you. That's why I tell my home sellers. Patience and optimism. Make sure to stay in touch with your agent. Make sure you're getting weekly market updates, not just an email saying, yeah, the market's still tough. No, nope, nothing happened. We'll talk to you next week. Now, what's happening? How many units have closed in your area, in your town? How many have closed? What's the sale price to list price ratio? How long did it take for them to get an offer? What prices are selling? I know in my MLS it breaks it down to what price ranges are doing what. And if you are above whatever your median price is for your area, it could take longer. So if your median, so for example, my median price in Plymouth is last time I checked about 6.25 thereabouts. So I've got a home seller that I'm working with that we're looking at pricing at about 800. So I've already advised them we're above the median price, which means demand might be a little slower. Let's take that into consideration. Prepare ourselves so that we're not surprised if it doesn't sell that weekend, because the market's changing everywhere, including the Northeast. Uh, Da, 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 da. What does the market look like for sellers May 26 to August 26? When I wish I had magic 8 ball. I have no idea. I have no idea. Check back here May 1st next year. I will tell you. And I am not trying to be snarky. There's just no way to know at this point. That's too long of a period of time. If you are trying to figure out whether you should sell, my suggestion, as it is always, you make your plans based on what is the best for you, financially, personally, relationally, job wise, retirement wise, whatever's on your plan, whatever. Why are you moving? That's what you need to ask yourself. If you are thinking about selling, you need to ask yourself, really be honest with yourself. Why do I want to do this? Write it down. Piece of paper, pros and cons list. I will die. That's what I'm doing with my boiler. I'm trying to research. I'm doing pros and cons. As I did that with my kid. I just dropped off at college, last week. Every school we went to, pros and cons. You got to do that with this as well. And I think what you'll find is if your intention is to move next year, it doesn't matter what the market is. Doesn't matter. The move is what's good for you. Taking all those things into consideration. I hope that helps you. Let's see. Patty says, we live in the capital region of New York. The market is so hot. Houses are selling with multiple offers in just a few days. Holy cow. My daughter's been looking for over a year. She has a good income and credit. You know what? There are pockets. There are absolutely pockets. The nation as a whole is not a buyer's market. There are a lot of markets that are buyer's market. A lot. I would say the majority of the country has flipped to a buyer's market. But there are pockets. The Northeast is one of them. If you're in the Northeast, the demand is still high. It's not, we don't have, our market is not that way. It's not super hot, put it on the market, get an offer, within days, but that's crazy. So your market must be that way. The question is for how long? Let's see, let's see, let's see, let's see. Let's see. David says the inflation rate is lower because rent prices are declining. I don't know that they're connected, and I don't know that rent prices are declining. I guess it depends on your area. I know they're not declining here. My daughter's looking for, with her and a partner, looking for an apartment. The prices are stupid. They're stupid high, ridiculous. And the HOA's rents are down in Denver. Some people are leaving, and now we're overbuilt. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Mitzi Lucas says 1-bedroom apartments in Midwest are $1,500 to $3,000. 2 bedrooms are $1,800 to $3,500. That is bonkers. Bonkers, bonkers. My first apartment was 1 bedroom, was $300. But of course, that was the early 90s, my friends, early 90s. Let's see. This is interesting. David says birth rate in America is 1.6 per woman, a record low. Right now it is. Right now it is. I'd be interested to know what that birth rate was 25 years ago, 30 years ago. That will tell you a very much different story, because those are the folks that are buying houses now, right? So the birth rate is low now. Why? Because it's so stinking expensive. Stinking expensive to have kids. It's very expensive. Not to mention, I mean, let's be honest with everybody feels, would agree that the turmoil and the things that are happening in this country right now, it's uncertainty all over the place. A lot of people are just like, I don't know if I want to start a family right now, which makes me super sad. But I think it comes down to money. It's just it's expensive to have a family. Image Oasis, but do local fire codes allow electric cars to be in the garage? Yes. Yes, they do. 100%. It's the same way if you have a gas car in your garage. Right? Same thing. Furnaces in your house, combustible fuel in your house. No different. No different, no different. Let's see. Yeah, ridiculous about the EV charger requirement. How long until technology changes and said charger no longer useful? I don't own an electric car, but honestly, I don't uh there I don't think we're going to go backwards with fossil fuel. I don't think so. I think there's going to be alternate ways. Do I think we're going to be driving wind-powered cars? No. No. But do I think that they'll be more efficient? And there already are. Toyota, don't hold this against me. I'm a loyal Toyota driver. And Toyota has now, all of their new cars are hybrids. They don't sell gas-only cars anymore. Period. Other companies will follow suit. I don't know about full electric, but hybrid. I don't know. My dad got a hybrid Honda CRV, and he's an engineer, so he's analyzing it, and he texted, "I'm on my way to church. I just got 40 miles to the gallon." Good for you, Dad. He was so excited. But I don't think it's going to go away. I think they'll be more useful. I honestly would rather have the charger in the garage than outside the garage, because I've heard of thievery. Not that I'm concerned about theft, but people pulling up and borrowing your charger to top off their car when at night when you're not home or whatever. It's bonkers. David says we do not need tax credits to increase the deficit. We need lower prices. Well, that's true. That's true. Here's the thing that I'm going to challenge you all on is, how do we have our cake and eat it too? How do we have our cake and eat it too? Everybody wants low prices. Everybody wants to pay less at the grocery store. Everybody wants all these things. But where does the money come from? Where does the money come from? That's the magic question. We can't, yes, increase the deficit. and something like that, yes, it's going to increase, but it's going to improve the quality of life for the average American. I'm not, you know, saying that that's what we should do. I don't know if a tax credit is the answer. I don't think it's going to solve the problems, but that is the challenge. Is like, how do we we want our cake and eat it too? Why? Because that is what society has told us for the last 20 years. Remember the Burger King ad? Have it your way. Well, you can't have it your way all the time. I feel like saying that every day, talking to somebody on the phone the other day, and it's like she's a secretary, office manager at my plumbing company, and I'm like, good grief, so this is not Burger King. You can't have it your way all the time, people. uh Pete Patterman. Is that a takeoff of the Peter Pan movie? Patterman, with Robin Williams. Anyways, wouldn't renters just be offered a tax credit to lower rent instead of home property owners getting an increase in value? Wouldn't renters just be offered a tax credit to lower rent instead of home property owners getting an increase in value? Maybe. I mean, I'm not actually quite sure about your question here. Maybe you can elaborate on what you're actually asking. I don't quite understand what you're inferring to on this. Because typically a renter's not going to get a tax credit, and the tax credits would be if you're buying or selling, but not renting. I don't think that renters typically don't get a lot of financial help, in terms, to get to be put towards your rent. Why? Because you don't have a mortgage with tax deductible interest. You're not homeowners paying property taxes. You're not paying any property taxes. You're not paying into the infrastructure of the town that way. So they're not going to be able to see those benefits. So I'm not sure. Maybe you can elaborate on that. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Kelly says, just call me out. I say 2 pieces of chocolate and I'm cutting out my sugar. That was a comment from earlier. I get you. I hope I can afford a house one day. If I tell my kids, if you want to do something bad enough, you will figure out how to do it. And I've got a real quick story I want to tell you about that. My house is 60 years old. Homes in my area, when they were built, they were just, built in early 71, early 70s. There was a massive housing boom. The builder that was building these houses, back then, they used what's called type M copper in their homes. So it was real thinner than what you'd see in today's residential housing. What you buy at Home Depot is a thicker lined copper pipe. And we're all on wells out where I'm at. And the wells, used to be all farmland back in the day. So the water, if you don't have a water filtration system, the water is very, eats away. It's a lot of minerals, it eats away at the pipes. So I had a pinhole leak in my, the main comes off into the house. And ironically, right before it diverts into the water filtration system. We're talking like comes out, goes up about 3 feet, and then it goes in and out of the filtration system. Right before it does that, I get a pinhole leak. I think I told you last week, I had a little water sensor. Told me it was leaking. Thank God. All the things. Okay. I started doing my research and I says, you know what? I am not a plumber, but I want to learn. I'm not a plumber, but I want to learn. Can I do this? Do I want to do this? Am I capable? The desire to do it was strong. The desire for me to figure it out. I wanted to understand. I wanted to really see. I ended up replumbing all that whole section. This past weekend, Sunday, did take me longer. I'm not a plumber, measuring pipes and all the things, but I'm super type A, so it takes me longer. And so I went through and I was like, oh, I have a leak that's going to start there. I got another one there, another one there. I figured it out. The desire to do it was there. My desire to do it was there, and I was capable of doing it. So I figured it out. The same goes for homeownership. It is hard. There'll be bumps and bruises. There'll be sacrifice. There will be sacrifice. You're gonna have to cut back. Going back to that Burger King reference about you can have it your way. You can't have the same budget. I had a conversation like this with my friend of mine recently that, doing some, adjustments in their income coming into their house. And I said, you got to, if here's the thing, you can survive, you've got to adjust your lifestyle. This is what the American people, this is what I'm going to do, get off my TED Talk box here in a second. But if you want to be a homeowner, you cannot live like you're living in your parents' house. If you want to be a homeowner, there's got to get your foot in the door. And I was talking to my kids, yes, back in when my husband at the time and I bought our first place in the late 90s, mid 90s. Yeah, things were cheaper. I was making a lot less money. A lot less money. He was making a lot less money. It was a similar struggle. Struggle in the sense that we had to cut way back. No eating out, no fast food. We had crappy cars. I didn't get my first brand new car. Oh my goodness. I was in the house that I'm in now. And then I finally bought a brand new car. Like, you've got to be willing to make the sacrifice. If you want it bad enough, you figure out how to do it. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in you. All right. I'm going to jump right back into Queen of Flux. If you're referencing my plumbing, I actually taught myself how to ProPress. I actually bought a ProPress machine, Viver, and it's a mini, which easier for me to handle with weight and all that. But ProPress with plumbing, honestly, was super fun. It was a pain in the butt, and my hands are hurting from the auto cut, the pipe cutters, and I am like super type A with like deburred it like 3-4 times. Like, I'm not giving this any reason. Knock on wood, no leaks. Woohoo! But anyhow, all right. Let's talk about mortgages. I wanted to cover, if this happens, what Trump, if Trump declares a national housing emergency, what does that mean for mortgages? Because we've heard, you hear a lot about, the rates need to come down. If the rates come down, then things will be more, that's the other side of the coin. If homes are less expensive, it'll be more affordable. Well, the other piece is if it costs less to get a mortgage, it'll be more affordable. But what will this look like if there is with a national housing emergency? What changes? And this article is a mortgage industry publication website follow here. This came out last week, and it says the potential declaration could mark. I'm going to actually make this for those that make this a little easier for you to read here. If we can get this to work, yeah. There we go. Make it a little easier for you at home. The potential declaration could mark another use of emergency powers by Trump, who has already declared national emergencies at the southern border for energy and economic issues since taking office in January. We're trying to figure out what we can do, and this is Bissett again talking. We don't want to step on any businesses, business estate counties and municipal governments. It's from the article from earlier. This is a national emergency declaration gives the president broad powers to redirect federal resources, waive certain regulations, and take actions without congressional approval. This is why he will do it this way, because it won't take an act of Congress. You don't have to pass the bill through Congress. They can streamline the process. This has happened many times, many times over our history. He's done it. And that's how we got away with. That's how we got away. I feel like that's like how we got away. The proper terminology, but that's how the tariffs happened so quickly. Because he didn't have to. He created a emergency. He declared a safety emergency in Washington, D.C. That's how he was able to roll out National Guard, without having Congress approval. It says past emergency declarations, for instance, during COVID-19 pandemic, have, and this is important, have enabled mortgage forbearance, foreclosure moratoriums, and direct financial assistance. So their direct financial assistance, you guys mentioned earlier about, adding to the federal debt. Yes, it would absolutely add to the federal. He did that with the big, beautiful bill. He added a ton of money with all the tax cuts to the upper level. The folks that probably don't need any more money or got got a lot of tax cuts in that big, that added a ton of money to the national deficit. Doing something like this would add more. However, enable at the time during COVID, you had people that couldn't work. It wasn't they weren't out of work. They could not work. Their businesses were shuttered. They were absolutely forbidden to go to work. Certain businesses, if you were not right, everybody remembers this. If unless you were deemed as or I can't think of the word now, but if you had a position that was deemed necessary, great. But if you were not in that position, you had no money. No money means no mortgage payment. No mortgage payment means trouble. That's why they did the mortgage forbearance. Forbearance meaning that the mortgage companies put a hold and would not, it gave them a grace period so they wouldn't foreclose. They did that with foreclosure moratoriums. They also offered things like, some outs for folks so that, in case they did get in trouble, the recasting the mortgage, so on and so forth. So that's what they did during COVID, but this is a whole different scenario. It says it's not clear whether the Trump administration would attempt to help homeowners by halting foreclosures or pausing mortgage payments. That would help existing homeowners. That would help. That's not what we're talking about. The housing crisis is stemming from people not able to buy. Not Yes, there is a handful of people. There are people that are facing financial hardship because of lost jobs. There are there's a lot of job loss across the country. A lot of it stemming from the tariffs, unfortunately. A lot of laborers, a lot of farmers shuttering their businesses, all the things. But halting foreclosures, pausing mortgage payments is not going to help the housing crisis as we see it today. However, it says that they could see agencies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac directed to loosen underwriting requirements or offer streamlined loan modifications. Okay, loan modification was what happened during COVID when you had um, an interest rate that readjusted, or you had, when the mortgage payment was unaffordable, wasn't sustainable because you didn't have the income coming in. You got behind, so they take that amount that you owed and they rolled it in and they recast the mortgage, so on and so forth, put you on a loan modification program. Loosening underwriting requirements scares the heck out of me. Why? Because that is what got us into the trouble that we were in 2008. The minute you start having an easier way for people to buy, that's when you're going to start seeing people buying homes that shouldn't be buying them in the first place. Now, hopefully it won't get to that point. If you've got someone that is, capable to buy it, but the question I have is, loosening the underwriting requirements to get the mortgage doesn't change the mortgage amount. So in other words, if the mortgage payment for this property, because of all, the cost of, if it's new construction, or the cost of the house itself and the amount of money to borrow the loan is, $3,500, changing the requirements to get the loan is not going to make it more affordable. It's still $3,500. It doesn't help the problem. It doesn't, I don't see how it helps the problem. It says declaring a national housing crisis might also allow the Trump administration to direct emergency funds toward affordable housing construction. This is interesting. Infrastructure or grants for local and state governments to stimulate building. It could also see regulatory requirements temporarily relaxed or expedited to speed up the construction of new homes, incentives for builders to introduce to turbocharge home building. This it all points back to the same thing of increasing the housing, increasing the supply, increasing the number of homes that are on the market. But tapping into directing the emergency funds toward affordable housing construction um, might mean something. It will affect the deficit. Um, my question, my commentary is yes, and I am not an economist. I am not an economist. So this is not, I won't enter it into an economic debate on the importance of the deficit. But my question to you all is today in 2025, what is more important? When I get up in the morning, am I thinking about the national deficit? Nope. I'm thinking about how my kid's gonna, at 23 years old, is gonna afford her first apartment so she can get out and start living her life, pursuing her career dreams. Start her life with her boyfriend, get married, all the things. I'm not thinking about the national deficit. I'm not. Should I? Maybe, but it's not the first thing on my mind. I'm thinking about the Sylvester economy. I think that's what most people do. They're thinking about their household economy. This pursuit to decrease the national deficit at what cost? At what cost? I feel like the cost, to pursue and get that. And yes, I know that it's not as simple as that. And I understand. I acknowledge that. I completely acknowledge that. But I think that greater picture, number one, if the goal is to decrease the federal deficit, I don't understand the big beautiful bill. Number one, but number two, is it worth the thousands of people that are having to close their business because they can't keep the doors open because A, they don't have the people that are willing to work there or able to work there, or B, they can't afford to buy the product that they need to deliver whatever service they're providing. I don't. What is more important, folks? What is more important? That's my commentary. All right. Prices, Deacon Bean Cooter says prices don't go down. Tricks are for kids. Prices don't go down, silly. Unfortunately, they do not. They never do. they they will adjust, but then they go back up again. It's just a matter of time. Um. Let's see. I'm just gonna go make sure I have. Oh, let's see here. Put a little soothing music here while I go cruise through the chat, and you can enjoy that in the background. Let's see. Interesting. Miss says tax bills are being paid, but a good percentage of these owners are not in the U.S. and they are paying through shell companies. Well, that's interesting. I don't have any data for that, but that's interesting. David says deficits ultimately increase inflation. When you spend more on food, there's less money to buy a house. Amen. 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 I personally think that's where they need to start. Food. I don't know. I love food. This is why I keep going back to food, and it's that time of day anyways. But when my kids were younger and eating candy or, whatever age, eating candy, is the solution to just go to the dentist more often to get your cavities filled or manage your sugar intake? Brush your teeth more often, get the sugar off your teeth. Instead of trying to attack the housing prices by adding more incentives or tax credits, why don't we add money to the baseline of the households by making it more affordable for people to live, like decrease the cost of living? How much does it, how grocery bills, energy bills, okay? Automobiles. Are you kidding me? The automobile I'm driving now costs as much as my first house, like a little bit less, but my first condo, which is ridiculous. Now, to tell you, it's going to last, knock on wood, it's going to last a long, long time. I've had it since 2017. Thing is fantastic, but make it more affordable, increase. Why are things so expensive? Because the rate of income has not matched the rate of appreciation for home prices. Period. And I will die on that hill. If people are making more money, they can afford to buy the thing. Period. If they're making more money, they can afford to buy the thing. People are not making, not only they're not making a lot of enough money, they're making less. They're making less because unemployment is rising. Because people are it's costing, again, back to the tariffs, the cost of goods are more expensive. Employers I'm not giving any, small businesses are not giving any, substantial increases in pay. Honestly, the people that are doing pretty well right now are your trades. I tell my kids, I'm like, you sure you don't want to be a plumber or welder? You make some good money. You make some good money, but those tradespeople, and those jobs are disappearing by the day. 30% of the trades retiring in the next 5 years. And there's not 30% of the population, but to fill those seats. And what is that going to do? Supply and demand. It's the same thing, guys. Supply and demand. The cost of trades are going to go through the roof. Sorry. Tickle in the throat. Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about mortgage rates, because this dropped earlier today, and talking about because the rates have come down. Mortgage rates today on September 9th dropped notably. National 30-year fixed mortgage rate is falling to 6.32%. Excuse me. Now, keep in mind that the Fed has not met. They meet next week to most likely make a cut to the basis points. But it says, I wanted to just touch on this because, the current mortgage, and actually I had a client who recently just closed on a house, a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, thereabouts. And they their mortgage, and you think, well, FHA mortgages, those are first-time homebuyers. No, FHA mortgages are not just for first-time homebuyers. He got a really great rate, and he qualified for conventional. Back in the day when I first got in the business, it was like, oh, if you can't qualify for conventional, go to FHA. And now people are going to FHA because it's less expensive. Here is the 30-year compared right now, national basis, 6.32%. And I just throw this in there. If you are looking to buy, this is the information that you want to consider. 30-year fixed mortgage, 30-year fixed FHA, 5.63%. You read that correctly. 5.63%. Now, I've said this before, you want to make sure that you don't just look at the rate, you look at the APR. The APR is going to include, the closing costs. So you're going to have your mortgage amount over 30 years based on this rate. Well, what happens if you take that mortgage amount plus your closing cost? Now that total amount over 30 years, the closing cost, what's the bank charging you, all the things. points. Things that sometimes these lenders, the unscrupulous ones, sneak in the back door with. That 30-year rate, that APR, is going to tell you how it stacks up, side by side with another company. So you have two companies both offering 5.63%, but one has an APR, in this case 6.63%. The other one has APR is 7%. Well, that 7% APR, that's when you got to say to the lender, like, where's that coming from? They may be buying down the rate and including it as in your closing costs. You don't even know it. So read the fine print. But 5.63% for an FHA 30-year fixed, not too shabby. Now, obviously, it depends on where you live, on what your, whether it's a conforming loan. If you're trying to buy a $1 million house, may not be available for you. But I wanted to just kind of cover this real quick. Is why are mortgage rates trending downward? Federal Reserve anticipated rate cut. Remember, the Federal Reserve does not directly affect the mortgage rate. Just because the Federal Reserve drops the rate does not mean that the mortgage rate automatically, it doesn't trigger it. However, it does impact it through the market. The markets, it says the markets are betting on a quarter point. So we saw this last year this time. It's the exact same thing happened. The rates dropped prior to the Fed meeting. That's what they're expecting here. So this is markets are betting on a quarter point interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve at the September 16th to 17th meeting, following slow economic indicators and rising unemployment. That's why they're cutting it a quarter point, is because the economy is not doing great. The expectation encourages lenders to lower mortgage rates proactively. Cooling labor markets. August 25, unemployment rate rose to 4.3%, a slight increase from 4.2%. And new job additions slowed drastically to 22,000, signaling softness in the economy. This is what I was talking about earlier in terms of new job additions slowing drastically. There's the money's not there for people to hire. They're just, the jobs are disappearing. People, especially the small businesses, they can't afford to a lot of them just can't afford to bring people on. Declining treasury yields, mortgage rates are closely tied to the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield, which has decreased to about 4.08% as investors seek safer assets amid uncertainty, dragging mortgage rates lower. Here's the thing. If you want to root for anything, which is not necessarily a great thing, lower rates are going to be are as a result of the economy not doing great. So again, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. We can't have a strong economy and low rates. It's just not going to happen. Economically, it doesn't work that way. The reason the rates are lower is to stimulate the economy. And when do they want to stimulate the economy? Is when the economy is softening. I think that sometimes it's like, I want what I want it now, and I want all the things. It's like, no, what would you like first? What's more important? What's more important? And hopefully there's a balance there, right? Hopefully you see a balance, but that's why the rates are dropping, because the economy is not doing as well as it was. That is not a political statement. That's a fact based on data. Period. So mortgage rates forecast and market predictions. Now, I forget who it was who asked about what the market's going to be like next year. Who knows? And mortgage rate forecast, take this with a grain of salt. Please, please, please do not make any decisions based on this data. Do not, because who knows? As we all know, anything could happen. It says the organizations tracking mortgage rates offer varied but generally cautious outlooks. So we've got the National Association of Realtors, Realtor.com, Fannie Mae, and the Mortgage Bankers Association. Now, all calling, Realtor.com and NAR is calling for roughly 6.4%. But National Association of Realtors actually, it says, anticipates rates dip to 6.1% in 2026. I think that if we don't see major changes in the economy, that's what's going to happen. If we don't see an improvement in employment, if we don't see improvement in the overall economy, this is what it'll keep trending that way. Realtor.com says rates easing slowly, evening. Fannie Mae end 2020, 25 and 26 respectively, upwards revisions versus previous forecasts. They've changed a little bit, but not a huge difference. I know that there's some articles out there, predictions that, getting into the fives. I think the only way you get into the fives is if you start looking at FHA, those types of products. I mean, even if you're a vet, a 30-year fixed VA, if you're a veteran, you have your VA loan option. That's lower. For those that are buying, for my folks that are selling and buying, if you have, a smaller mortgage because you get a good, nice down payment from the sale of your house, you may consider, instead of enjoying that lower payment, if you're able to make a little bit, higher payment and shortening the term, 15-year, you can get almost 5% for 15-year FHA, 5.18%. What does that mean? That means you pay less in interest. Means you pay less in interest, but your payment will be higher, obviously, because it is a more condensed. You don't have all that amortization. So your payment is going to be higher with a 15 versus a 30. And in case you're thinking of it, and I know some of you might be, mortgage companies cannot discriminate on the basis of age. And you might laugh about this and say, what are you talking about? Of course they can't do that. And I can't tell you how many folks have asked me, seriously, I've met with them, buyer consultation over the years, and maybe they're in their late 50s buying their first house. Or maybe you're buying your second house. You're in your 60s, you're buying your second house. And your financial advisor says, don't buy it cash, get a mortgage, because then you have the interest rate deduction. You have your paid interest deduction. Well, yes, 65-year-old getting a 30-year mortgage. The question I got was, I'm not going to live that long. Will they even give it to me? The answer is yes. Why? Because they cannot discriminate on the basis of age. Doesn't matter. You likely won't be, unless you got really good genes. Unless you got really good genes, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your personal situation is. They can't. So if the monthly payment is the most important thing to make your life more comfortable, go with the 30-year. Be done with it. Don't worry about your long-term, what your interest is going to pay, because it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. All right, I want to jump over the chat here because I got one more, two more articles I want to just touch on what I thought was super interesting information just dropped today. Carpe Diem says, I paid cash, no regrets. Good for you. Good for you. Charlton Zimmerman, good to see you. VA loan at $82,000, 3.75%. Hold on to that as long as you can. Absolutely, positively. This is a great analogy. Double door swings out. Only problem is he used Phillips screws instead of rounded heads, so the homeless sometimes try to dismantle it. Oh, jeez. Oh boy. Let's see. I'm going to go through here. Banks are starting 7.75% equity loans. They are desperate. Yeah, you're going to see a lot. We have seen mortgage equity applications are up. And when the economy tends to shift the way it's shifting, and the conversation about a potential recession keeps surfacing, keeps flirting around, because there's no indication to say that we're not heading towards a recession, or that we may even be in a slight recession right now. There's nothing that's happening. Like, can we please just focus on the general economy instead of all the other nonsense that's happening? White House, Make the cost of groceries go down. Come on. I mean, do we have to like rename the War Department? Like, how does that help me with the cost of milk and bread and eggs? I digress. Oh my God. I am a very, very, very staunch independent. I don't vote left or right. I vote for the party. I don't talk politics. I don't talk about myself that way. And I'm not going to, but I will tell you that I am independent. I'm not committed to a party. Despite what my hair tells you, I'm sorry. It's just, why? Because I believe in the policies and the person, period. And so, it's whoever, I had words for Biden too when he was in office. But it's just let's help the people. I mean, get these politicians to help the people anyways. Yes, Carol says limited trade workers is limiting production. Yes, yes, yes. It certainly is. Let's see here. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see. There was a huh. Yeah, this is why the poll says 3 hours ago 0% results. I don't know. It still says it's active on my end. It might be a funky YouTube thing, Charlton. I don't know. Because that is completely out of my hands because the way the polls work, it's all directly on YouTube. MHOA, can you overnight can you send a courier to Massachusetts? I want tacos. Decrease realtor fees. Well, good luck with that. And I don't say that as a real estate agent. I say that as just a consumer. Trust me when I tell you, I talk to these referral partners day in and day out. I get all the horror stories, all the things. There's no cahoots. It's called, they just won't do the business. They're not going to work for $2 an hour. It's here's the thing. You don't have to use a realtor. You don't have to use a realtor. Study, make sure it's careful. Make sure you're careful. Like there's this whole thing about, you don't like real estate agents. That's fine. Don't use them. Do you travel without a travel agent? Yes. You don't need a travel agent. Did I choose to use a travel agent when I took my family to Disney? The one and only time we went to Disney. Yeah, because I'd never been before and I needed guidance because I'm spending a ton of cash and I don't want to be in a situation where I'm wasting money. I want to make the most out of my time while I'm there. So it was worth it to me. The value is there for me to hire a travel agent. Real estate agent's the same thing. If you don't find value in it, then don't use a real estate agent. However, make sure you do your homework. You got to do your homework, or you might end yourself in a headache, in a pickle, because an attorney is not a real estate agent. They're just not. They have a different skill set. I have a situation now where I have a representing the seller, and buyer came to the table. Buyer is not asking for compensation on a buyer agent fee. Why? Because they're using a family member who's a real estate attorney, which is great. That's whatever. I'm looking out for my seller. And that was with multiple offers. That was the best offer for a number of reasons, all the things. Fine. I'm going to tell you right now, that attorney is not a good negotiator. They're not dealing, they may negotiate contracts, but when it comes to negotiation on home inspection issues, when it comes to negotiating anything and looking out for her client who's a family member, not the same. But that's okay. It's coming back full circle to what I was talking about earlier. You don't make decisions on, everybody makes a decision on what's important to them. And if the money and the bottom line is the most important to you, then that's what you got to do. That's what you absolutely have to do. But real estate agents aren't going to work for free. Just like I'm sure you wouldn't either. Or whatnot. I'm sure if I went to my plumber and said $1,000 and that's what you did, can you take 500? He'd say no. Nope. I'm gonna say hell to the thank you, but hell to the no. I would never want that job. Holy cow. I would no. Too much stress and dealing with people that just drive me crazy. Um, yeah, so, yeah, real estate require be very careful when you make broad, sweeping comments. In general, I see this all the time in the comments. Realtors in general are not requiring 6%. The real estate agent that you might have talked to may require. So a lot of agents across the country. Why? Because there's hundreds of thousands of them in that industry in the industry, and a lot of them may require, but not all. I don't. I don't. And it do please don't make broad sweeping statements on that. The other piece of it is interview them, and if you don't like it, then don't hire them. That's it. You don't have to hire them. You don't. Um, yeah, there you go. Is it couldn't find? He's talking to Charlton about baked beans. I think we're gonna see a lot of you know, back in the day when money was tight. It's mac and cheese, mac and cheese, mac and cheese. All right, I want to let's see here. David says interest rates go down because the economy is doing poorly. In the Great Recession, rates were low as house prices were falling. Yes. Yes, people weren't buying homes because they couldn't afford to buy homes. Uh, totally different reason. They were laid off. They were people that were being foreclosed on because they got into mortgages that they couldn't afford, adjustable rate mortgages. And when the mortgages came, when the rate adjusted, it was lights out. They're like, I can't afford this payment. You know, they not enough guidance and regulation was set in those mortgage programs. They should never have gotten the mortgage in the first place. Never. Never, never, never. So, okay, speaking of prices, so I came across this dropped yesterday. And this conversation, popped up, lumber prices and whatnot when the talk of tariffs first surfaced, and all kinds of conversation about that and whatnot. But if we're talking about the key to getting us out of this crisis, the key to the emergency declaration, one of the key components, the cornerstone, is to add housing. We have an increased population. We need more houses. When I see an article like this is a massive roadblock. Lumber prices are flashing a warning sign for the US economy. And, what does the lumber price have to do with the economy? Lumber prices affect real estate. Real estate is the largest gross domestic product in our country, period. Period. Bigger than an apple. It's bigger. The amount of money, and I'm not talking about money in the seller's pockets. That's not where, yes, there's transactions, but that's a personal, that's a individual transaction. Every homeowner that purchases a home, that new homeowner, furniture, updates, renovations, repairs. Not everybody's doing plumbing. I'm not replacing my furnace. I'm hiring a plumber. And it is not cheap. Period. Why? Because that's the way it is. Period. So trades a home sale affects all of those industries. So if the linchpin, if the thing standing in the way of relief to housing prices is to build more housing, what do you build these houses with? The key element, lumber. It's a big problem if all of a sudden we start seeing a warning sign. It says falling lumber prices are sounding an alarm on Wall Street about potential problems on Main Street. Wood markets have been whipsawed. There's so many like references in the language. Whoever wrote this article had some fun. Have been whipsawed of late by trade uncertainty and deteriorating housing market. Futures have dropped 24% since hitting a 3-year low high at the beginning of August and ended Monday at $526.50 per thousand board feet. The price drop might have been greater, but two of North America's biggest sawyers said last week that they would curtail output, slowing the decline. Crashing wood prices are troubling because they have been a reliable leading indicator on the direction of the housing market, as well as broader economic activity. During the COVID-19 lockdown, 2x4s, I remember this specifically, 2x4 prices nearly tripled the pre-pandemic record, an early sign of the inflation and broken supply chains that would bedevil the economic reopening. When the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates in 2022 to curb inflation, lumber was among the first assets to decline in value. Now, prices are signaling caution again. A glut of lumber was piled up stateside earlier this year in anticipation of higher duties on Canadian imports and additional tariffs on wood threatened by President Trump. Lumber prices have been on a roller coaster. They rose in the spring after the White House said it was investigating national security aspects of imported lumber. I didn't hear about that segment, about the security aspects. And Trump threatened steep tariffs on all Canadian goods. They crashed when he backed off Canada. In May, they started surging again as buyers began stocking up ahead of the scheduled hike in existing Canadian lumber duties in Trump's threatened tariffs. It says Interfor, North America's third largest lumber producer, said Thursday that it would choke back output by 12%. With cuts across its sawmills in the U.S. South, Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, and Eastern Canada, it will reduce hours and reconfigure shifts, as well as lengthen holiday breaks and maintenance shutdowns to reduce production by about 145 million board feet through year end. If builders can't get wood, they're not going to build. It's simple. This is a problem. This is a potential problem. It says analysts and traders say that there will be further cuts to ease the glut of wood. That might not be a problem given how higher duties have pushed Canadian sawmills break-even prices while demand wails. As we anticipate further closures or curtailments, says Truist Securities analyst Michael Roxland. The White House is still contemplating broad tariffs on imported wood in the name of national security, as it has with aluminum, steel, and copper products. Any tariffs for Trump would be separate from the existing duties levied on Canadian softwood lumber imports, which fulfill about 24% of U.S. consumption. I wanted to bring up this article because of the fact that, again, if the cost of building said homes, if what we need is more new construction to help increase the supply. Increased supply means you have enough widgets, the cost of the widget will go down. How do we do this if the cost of lumber, the availability of lumber, is decreasing? Inquiring minds want to know. This is what I don't understand, and maybe somebody can explain it to my 10-year-old brain on how all of these moving pieces that the White House is doing to help the government bring more money into the country, all the tariffs and everything else, all it's doing is increasing the cost to the American people, and it's reducing the potential to have relief in our economy by stuff like this. It's something to watch. So when you're looking at your articles this week, next couple of weeks and coming future, when you're, put this, I'm just making this little deposit in the back of your brain as you're going through, doing the doom scrolling like I am 2 a.m. because I can't sleep because, menopause. Boo. And you see an article about lumber prices, check it out, because it might give you a little inkling of what is around the corner. To follow up with that though, because we've got a negative, I like to balance it out. And I also like to end my live streams on a positive note because I tend to be a very glass half full person. I came across another article. I was doing some investigating myself. This is not a new article. This was last month, but I've been kind of talking about this for a bit. I mean, to be honest, I'm very familiar with this process, but now when I Googled it, it is becoming more and more of a possibility, and it might be a necessity, and that is 3D printed houses. When you have a house that's made out of concrete, you don't need wood. You don't need wood. And this fascinates me. This fascinates me. I have a 3D printer. It's small. It's not going to build a house. I usually build, if I need something around the house that I can't go and buy, I find the design online and then I print it. I did that quite a bit when my kids were in school and they needed, something, props or something for their, theater productions or whatever. But this article talks about, affordable 3D printed houses finally coming to the US. And it talks about, the 3D printed architecture that first materialized, and he assumed it would lead to widespread affordability, but it's the cost of those printers. The cost of those printers are enormous, and it requires a special skill set and the whole things. And a lot of folks will think, oh gosh, why do I want to live in a 3D printed house? I want you to look at some of these 3D printed houses. Let's see if I can get to the, here we go. This is, give me a second here. Where are we looking at? This is, this house I'm going to show you is $195,000 in Austin. So this is Austin, Texas. All right. This house is being printed. Here is a neighborhood, right? These are beautiful. Beautiful. $195,000, guys. No wood. Now, yes, this is probably wood trim and all the things. And the interior. Now, and having followed this and knowing, and I've watched YouTube videos because I'm obsessed with YouTube. What's cool is that these walls, you say, well, why the line? That's because the extruder is what they call it. It's like a nozzle. It's like squirting out toothpaste. And you have a design, and it just basically, it's a set it and forget it. The contractors that are there basically there to make sure the machine follows the path. And so it's all automatic. They tell it where to start, where to stop, skip for the windows, all the things. These are all the lines from that extruder. But here's the thing. You can add another layer. You can put drywall on the inside. You can cover that up. There's a lot of things you can do to make it look like a non 3D printed house. I mean, this aesthetic is kind of cool, is very cool. But if you don't like the roundness, if you don't like the lines, that's fine. I mean, you can put nails in it and all of, you can do anything that you want to, do in a typical home. But I think it's fascinating, and I think that there's huge potential. A hurricane hits a house made out of concrete. Guys, did we learn anything from the from the Three Little Pigs? Did we learn anything from Three Little Pigs? Nursery rhymes. Sometimes you got to get back to basics. If a hurricane hits a cement-built house versus a wood-built house, what do you think's going to happen? I'd rather be in the cement house. So I just think that it's becoming, the fact that they're doing this in Austin, the fact that they're testing this out, and this is not new. It's something that is, so I haven't heard it in the mainstream, as of yet, but I think you will. If we continue to see the challenges with lumber continuing, they can't bring down the cost of building. They can't make it more affordable. This might be the next best option. I think this is the next best option. And I think that we need to maybe give these companies, these 3D printed companies, give them some tax breaks so they can get in there and start doing the thing. So, all right, let me just check in the chat. Um, let's see. Adam says, sorry, join the conversation late. I think buying a house should be any different than buying a vehicle. The owner should have a title with or without liens on it from whoever loans are through. So I think I know what you're talking about. The problem being is that you're talking land. You buy a car. Everything you see in front of you is what you're buying. It is what it is. When you're buying a house and the land that it sits on, now you're talking about buying something that is interconnected to infrastructure in the community. And that's where it gets sticky. Verifying boundaries, making sure that there's no sheds that are encroaching on your property that could lead to debate. It could lead to legal action. It could lead to legal action, so the homeowner will walk away from the house, which is why the lender requires a mortgage survey to make sure that they got to make sure that their investment is protected, that they don't end up with a stinker, give you all that money, and then you walk away and they're going to lose money on it. So there's a lot of moving parts. Obviously, a lot of things that could go wrong, a ton. But I get what you're saying. I think it has become complicated, but I think that the world is complicated. Let's see. We will be closing in a few weeks. My wife's asked for an agent you delivered, helped us get a few concessions as well. Wanted you to know. Yes. Congratulations, and that makes me so happy. Love it, love it, love it. As I always say, there's 20% agents, there's 80% of the agents out there are not worth the money they're charging, but there's a handful that are 110%. Let's see. I'm just going around here and make sure I get all your comments here. Oh my goodness. Cindy says I had a pre-approval through Zillow and they canceled it because I didn't have a realtor. That sounds sketchy. That sounds super sketchy. Zillow is a real estate company. Zillow has now merged with Rocket Mortgage. So they're interconnected. Maybe everything is, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. I think that was probably your out. So you can go on and do better. Get on to someone that will take better, watch out for your best interests. Yes, yeah, Reed says the travel agents have access to some different pricing platforms at no cost to you, and I still compare prices. Yeah, do your homework. You got to do your homework. 110%. Well, that's true. If you don't use a realtor, you pay for a lawyer. Lawyers do not work for free. Yeah, and it's limited service, David, right? It's limited service in the sense that, if you're looking for advice on whether you're about to make a huge mistake because the house is a money pit, that's going to be not just a real estate agent, but a real estate agent that has been around the block. I don't know how many times I've talked people out of buying houses. A lot. Because you say, well, what about this? What about this? I'm not in construction, but after 6, 7, 800 home inspections, you tend to learn some stuff. And, I'm obsessed with learning and all the things. So, it is what it is. All right, guys, I'm just checking the chat real quick. Yes. Patty says replacing the deck boards and railings on our deck. It's not cheap. Luckily, we can do it ourselves. You know what? The plumbing, all the plumbing work I did, not for nothing. It was a pain in the butt because it was a bit of a learning curve. And I'm hiring my plumbers for other things. I'm not, trust me, they'll be getting some money but the amount of money I saved, a lot of money. saved. That's not the reason I did it. Let's see here. All right, guys, I just want to make sure that I get to all your questions. Charles says, who wants to live in a concrete bunker? Well, if it's underground, man, I'm not going to do it. But if it's above ground, like if you're living in Austin, it's like living in a built-in air conditioner. It's going to hold in. It's super, super well insulated. Your cost of your energy bill is going to go down. But like, let me ask you, what's different? I mean, yes, it's probably a little more echoey, but honestly, my brother lives in just outside of Austin and everything's tiled down there and they got 2 little kids. And you want to talk about echo? They live in a stick-built house and it echoes like crazy. So just put some area rugs. But hey, I'd live in a concrete bunker if it was super luxurious and super affordable. Yes, concrete cracks. That's why you got to make sure you do your research. Do your research. This is not new. This 3D printing is not new. It has been around. They've perfected nothing's perfect. They're always going to make it more perfected. But the formula that they use for the concrete is this is not something that they thought of last week. It's been around for a long time. But you gotta do your homework. Do your homework. Pulse is perfect for 3D printed people. Oh boy. You get the jokes. That's funny. I love that. Love that. Oh, I want to, yeah, I don't know what's going on with, that's so weird with I'm going to do a little bit of refreshing on my browser here. See if I can, yeah, the poll. I'm sorry about the poll, guys. I don't know why the poll says 0. It still shows that it's active on my end. So I don't know what happened there. That's going to be a goof on YouTube. Because I had, you got to do it right on their site. So unfortunately, I don't have any poll results for you tonight. But in any event, yeah, Tiffany says, what percentages should we look at for APRs? It is going to depend on your area. It's going to depend on your FICO score. It's going to depend on your loan amount. That I can't give you. I don't have an answer for you on that one. But you got to shop apples to apples. So once you get pre-approved for a mortgage, you can get pre-approved, or pre-qualified for multiple mortgages. Super, super important when you do get if you want to say, well, how much will you approve me for or whatnot? And you don't necessarily have to get pre-approved to get your APR, but just to get a general idea of where you kind of where you want to slot into in terms of, how much money you're going to have to borrow, what you're able to borrow, all the things. So every time you do a pre-approval, it's going to ping your credit. You don't want to do that multiple times. But it depends on the area that you live in in part of the country as well. All right, guys. I am going to just make sure that this is yeah, okay, pause. You can't 3D print floors. You can the foundation is poured, but then there is always going to be infrastructure. Always. So you have contractors build out, add the electrical, the plumbing, your fixtures, your kitchen, your bathrooms, right? Adding floors, whether you do tile, laminate, wood, luxury vinyl, carpet, whatever the heck floats your boat. There's going to be contractors that do that, but it won't be significantly, it won't impact the pricing significantly like it does when you build a wood-based house, a stick-built house. But in modular homes is the same way. You buy a modular home, it's, that modular home is built in a factory with cabinets, but it's shipped to you. Usually you have like on a ranch, it's 2 pieces. So you've got a contractor that has to join the 2. You got a contractor on site that does foundation or basement. You've got, there's contractors involved in terms of the finish work for sure. So, and anyhow, all right, guys. I thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, once again this evening. And get to all your comments, but I really appreciate you guys chiming in and on the chat. I'm gonna read through them after we go offline here because it is that time of day. Getting a little hungry. Getting a little hungry. You're very welcome, Carpe Diem. I appreciate you guys immensely. And you know what? If you have any questions after the stream, just jump in the comments, leave it, down in the comments. I'm going to post all the articles in the description and whatnot. I will try to get to your comments as much as I possibly can, as quickly as I can. But you guys all have a great week. We'll be here next Tuesday. I'll be here next 6 p.m. Eastern. Same bat time, same bat channel. But you guys be safe, be good. Live your life like glass is half full. Check in on your neighbor. And as I always say, if you don't agree with your neighbor, if you don't see eye to eye on anything, an issue or politically or anything of that nature, before you pass judgment, seek to understand. Seek to understand because you might find that you may be closer on the important things than you realize. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao.